On this Saturday night, a Canadian cruise ship passenger in quarantine in BC tests positive for hantavirus.
One individual started to develop mild symptoms, including a fever and a headache, 2 days ago.
What we know about the patient, their condition, and why 3 of the 4 Canadians in quarantine are now in hospital. U.S. authorities arrest a suspect over a New York terror plot.
He was targeting the heart of our Jewish community.
His links to 18 attacks, including 2 in Canada. Plus, thousands in London march in rival protests. Pro-Palestinian supporters versus the far right. And high hopes for the Habs.
We're feeling good. We're very great.
The last Canadian team in the Stanley Cup playoffs look to punch their ticket to the next round.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. A Canadian isolating in Victoria, BC, has tested positive for hantavirus. BC's top doctor says the patient, who is from Yukon, developed mild symptoms, including a fever and headache.
The test on the individual who had these mild symptoms was positive for the Andes strain of hantavirus. Clearly, this is not what we hoped for, but it is what we planned for.
The result will be confirmed by the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg. The patient is among 4 Canadian cruise ship passengers isolating on Vancouver Island following a hantavirus outbreak on board that has claimed 3 lives. Nathaniel Dove has more on the presumptive case, who may be at risk, and the measures being taken to mitigate the spread.
One individual started to develop mild symptoms.
BC's provincial health officer announcing one former passenger of the MV Hondius, now in quarantine in BC, has tested positive for hantavirus.
The patient is stable. The symptoms remain mild at this point, and they are still in hospital, in isolation.
Dr. Bonnie Henry also stressing the virus's long incubation period means they had time to prepare for treatment. 4 people now in quarantine in BC were on the Hondius, where the virus was first detected. The patient who tested positive is in their 70s and from the Yukon. They were there with their partner, who is experiencing very minor symptoms but has not tested positive. The partner will remain in hospital, along with a 3rd person, but only out of an abundance of caution. They and a 4th, who is isolating in Victoria, have no symptoms. The 3 people who died from the virus aboard the ship were all in their mid to late 60s. A hantavirus researcher says the infection in the Canadian in their 70s is serious, but there's a key difference.
They're going to be in a hospital setting and be monitored by doctors basically around the clock now, right? And so that's sort of what you would want if you were infected.
Dr. Henry and the World Health Organization stress so far all the cases are only among the ship's passengers.
It shows that the control measures are working, that laboratory testing is ongoing, and that people are being cared for.
The doctors all confident they can contain the virus.
And it remains one that we do not consider to have pandemic potential.
5 other Canadians are deemed to be high risk. Alberta tells Global News the 2 people in that province remain asymptomatic. Ontario's health ministry said Thursday 3 people there had no symptoms. The federal government is also monitoring 27 others considered low risk. Colleen?
Nathaniel Dove in Toronto. Thanks, Nate. At least 80 people have died in a widening Ebola outbreak in eastern Congo. The disease has spread to 3 health zones in the country, and health authorities have linked a death in Uganda to the Congo outbreak. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns there is a risk the disease could spread further into Uganda and neighboring South Sudan. A terror plot targeting Jewish sites in 3 U.S. states has been thwarted, and tonight a suspect is in custody facing numerous terrorism-related charges. As Candice Cole tells us, the accused is believed to have direct ties to similar operations in Europe and right here in Canada.
Iraqi national Mohammed al-Saadi was arrested Friday in connection to at least 18 terror attacks, including bombings and arson in Europe and terror plots in California, Arizona, and New York, according to the U.S. Justice Department.
The defendant publicly called for supporters to kill everyone who supports America and Israel.
He's also allegedly tied to 2 terror attacks in Canada, including a shooting at the U.S. consulate in Toronto back in March. No one inside the building at the time was hurt.
It's definitely a national security incident because we had the U.S. consulate, after all, struck by gunfire.
According to the DOJ's filing, al-Saadi is believed to be a commander in the Iranian-backed proxy group Kataib Hezbollah and was targeting Jewish and American communities. He's accused of orchestrating the attacks in Europe over a span of 3 months, like the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in London in April, and allegedly discussed plans to attack the New York synagogue, which included the use of explosives and sending over cryptocurrency payments for the attack to be carried out.
The attack never occurred because the defendant was, in fact, plotting with an undercover law enforcement officer.
But al-Saadi's defense lawyer says his client's arrest is politically motivated and he should be treated as a prisoner of war.
We believe that he's being punished for an alleged relationship with the late Qasem Soleimani.
Qasem Soleimani was a top Iranian military leader killed during U.S. President Donald Trump's first administration in 2020. Al-Saadi's defense team is also taking issue with how he was taken into custody.
Our understanding is that he was arrested in Turkey by Turkish authorities and quickly thereafter turned over to U.S. authorities and was brought to the United States without any kind of due process or opportunity to contest.
Al-Saadi is facing 6 terrorism-related charges and could face up to life in prison. He's due back in court later this month. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
U.S. President Donald Trump is touting the targeted killing of a top ISIS commander in Africa. In a post late Friday, Trump said the militant group's second-in-command was killed in a joint operation carried out by American and Nigerian armed forces. Nigeria's president confirmed the leader's death, adding several of his lieutenants were also killed during a strike on their compound. The Nigerian national was declared a specially designated global terrorist by the Biden administration in 2023. In his post, Trump described him as the most active terrorist in the world and said his death signifies a major blow to the organization's African and global networks. Mourners lined the streets of Gaza City today following an Israeli strike that killed the top military leader of Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Izz al-Din al-Haddad was one of the architects of the October 7th attack nearly 3 years ago that spurred the war in Gaza. The deadly strike comes in spite of a U.S.-brokered ceasefire reached last October. Hamas and Israel remain deadlocked in indirect talks to advance a post-war plan. Less than 24 hours after U.S. President Donald Trump wrapped up a state visit to China, the Kremlin has announced Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to Beijing to meet with President Xi Jinping. Putin's visit, which is scheduled for early next week, will mark the second time in less than a year the two leaders have met. The two are expected to discuss ways to strengthen their countries' comprehensive partnership and exchange views on key international and regional matters. In the UK, thousands of protesters have filled the streets of London as 2 rival protests unfold there today, underscoring the country's divisions over domestic and foreign policy. It's all happening as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's political turmoil deepens. As Vincent McAviney reports, Starmer now faces several challenges to his leadership, including from within his own Labour Party.
Saturday saw the streets of central London filled with hundreds of thousands of protesters taking part in 2 rival marches. A pro-Palestinian Nakba Day demonstration, remembering the displacement of Palestinians during the creation of the State of Israel. And a Unite the Kingdom rally, organised by far-right figure Tommy Robinson. Robinson, a convicted criminal and fraudster, advocates a hardline anti-immigration position. More than 4,000 police officers kept the 2 marches apart, with drones, police horses, dogs and armoured vehicles deployed in what was described as one of the most significant policing operations in years. They're also under pressure to clamp down on anti-Semitism and hate speech across both demonstrations. The protests cap off a week of high drama. One that on Wednesday saw the full pomp and circumstance of a King's speech setting out Keir Starmer's legislative agenda. But within 24 hours, the Prime Minister's prospects of staying in power to deliver it were cut. A number of junior ministers resigned, followed by Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who issued a stinging critique of Starmer's leadership, accusing him of lacking vision and delivery. Streeting waited until Saturday to make this announcement.
We need a proper contest with the best candidates on the field, and I'll be standing.
He said the country needed leadership willing to confront what he described as rising racism and xenophobia, claiming it was being normalised both in marches like Tommy Robinson's and within Nigel Farage's Reform Party. He'll face competition from the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham.
I want Labour solidly to be the party of working class people and working class communities, and that requires a lot of change.
And Starmer's former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is also running. Starmer has vowed to stay in office, but if he's defeated in a leadership race, the UK would be appointing its 7th Prime Minister in a decade, prompting some to question whether the kingdom has become too divided to govern. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
There is heightened security in Vienna as hundreds gather to protest the Eurovision Song Contest, which is having its grand final there today. Demonstrators are condemning the inclusion of Israel in the contest because of the war in Gaza and the ongoing violence against Palestinians. 5 countries have also boycotted Eurovision for those reasons. It's the largest boycott the contest has faced in decades, overshadowing the spectacle of the world's biggest music competition. A plea from Atlantic Canada. Coming up, why companies there say the federal government's immigration policy is bad for business. And the last hope for a Canadian Stanley Cup win could advance to that goal tonight. With just weeks to go until scores of fans flock to Toronto for the FIFA World Cup, Canada's largest public transit system may hit a major roadblock. The Toronto Transit Commission and the union representing hundreds of its skilled workers are in the midst of a wage-related negotiation aimed at avoiding a strike. The good news? A looming deadline for talks originally set for last night was moved to today, as both sides said there was progress made towards a deal. CUPE Local 2 represents roughly 700 electrical workers responsible for maintaining critical TTC infrastructure. Business and political leaders in Atlantic Canada are calling on the federal government to loosen its immigration targets for the region. Ottawa is trying to address a housing crisis for Canadians, but some companies say the downstream impact is that they're having trouble filling job vacancies. Anna Mandin reports.
It's the air we breathe. Our businesses need people.
Last February, New Brunswick's permanent resident nominations were halved by the federal government before rising last spring to 4,200 nominations, 23% lower than 2024 numbers. But Atlantic business representatives say the need for labor is still a challenge.
We are calling on the federal government to carve out and look at Atlantic Canada a little different when it comes to policies.
Toke Lane says rural businesses in sectors like manufacturing and aquaculture, as well as hospitality and tourism, are in desperate need of labor.
We know in Atlantic Canada, we've got the fastest aging workforce, so we need a plan, and we do need people now.
And while the federal government recently increased the low-wage temporary foreign worker cap from 10 to 15% for rural employers, the Atlantic Director of Legislative Affairs for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business says it's not enough.
You can't train an electrician, and double the number of electricians tomorrow. It takes time, it takes programs, takes a willingness from a younger generation.
Canada also decreased international student study permits by nearly 10% last year, or 48,000 fewer permits. St. Thomas University has seen 30 fewer international students per year since the 2024 decision, but its president says that's not the only consequence.
The reputation of Canada as a premier destination for international students has been tarnished. It's going to take years for us to recover from that.
Meanwhile, New Brunswick Immigration Minister Jean-Claude Demore says the province continues to advocate for change.
We all know that we will need 136,000 new employees within the next 10 years. So we continue to push on that side for the economic employees, but also for our universities and colleges.
He says he met with the federal immigration minister in the last couple weeks. Anna Mandan, Global News, Fredericton.
In Bangkok, at least 8 people have been killed and dozens more injured in a collision between a freight train and a bus at a rail crossing in the city's downtown core. The bus burst into flames. Emergency responders pulled injured victims from the wreckage as fire crews worked to contain the blaze. Several nearby cars were also caught up in the collision. Early reports and video evidence suggest the bus had stopped on the train tracks due to heavy traffic preventing crossing barriers from closing. A rescue diver has died while searching for the bodies of 4 Italians killed in a scuba diving accident. In total, 5 Italians died Thursday while attempting to explore underwater caves at a depth of about 50 meters. The body of one diver has been recovered. The recreational diving limit in the Maldives is 30 meters. Ahead, can't get to Barcelona this summer? We'll take you there and inside a famed Gaudi structure that's been closed to the public until now.
We've almost lost some pets. It's a little scary.
People in this Atlanta neighborhood have been experiencing a strange new problem. Driverless Waymo robo-taxis were, for some reason, congregating in their quiet cul-de-sac. At one point, 50 of them had showed up. Waymo blames something called routing behavior and says the problem has now been fixed. Anyone who has ever visited Barcelona will have encountered the magical works of Antoni Gaudi. He's the famed architect and designer of the city's iconic Sagrada Familia church. Another of his most famous buildings was recently, and for the very first time, fully open to the public. Redmond Shannon takes us on a tour.
With the careful addition of the giant glass cross earlier this year, Barcelona's Sagrada Familia officially became the world's tallest church. A staggering 172 meters high, its final height following 144 years of work. Construction on the entire church is set to finish sometime in the 2030s. It will forever be Antoni Gaudi's magnum opus, but his mark on the city goes far beyond the church. The revered architect's work is deeply connected to and associated with Barcelona and Catalan culture, intertwining the natural world with faith. Many of his works are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including Park Güell overlooking the city, and this, Casa Batlló, and its dreamlike facade. After years of renovations, the entire building is now open to the public. In particular, the third-floor apartment, as designed by Gaudi, previously a private residence.
El estuco de paredes.
Every detail you see here is as it was designed, says the restoration architect Xavier Villanueva. Gaudi's genius shaping every little piece of design, from undulating ceilings to floor tiles and door handles. There is an irony to the fact that a one-time home may attract more visitors to Barcelona, a city now cracking down on short-term tourism rentals to ease the strain on its housing supply. Next month, though, one particularly esteemed visitor will draw crowds with him to the city. On June 10th, Pope Leo will say Mass at the Sagrada Familia to inaugurate its main tower on the centenary day of Gaudi's death. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Next, Game 6 and the excitement tonight around the Habs' march towards the Stanley Cup. The Montreal Victoire have taken Game 2 of the PWHL's Walter Cup final after sending the game to overtime against the Ottawa Charge today, just like in Game 1. The winner of the series will become the first Canadian team to win the Walter Cup. NHL fans are also hoping to keep the good times going. The Montreal Canadiens face off against the Buffalo Sabres tonight in a decisive Game 6 that could propel the Habs into the Eastern Conference Finals and a step closer to the Stanley Cup. Elizabeth Zagalis joins us from Montreal with more on the excitement. Elizabeth.
Colleen, it is wild out here as usual, but I think fans are a bit more nervous than usual. Now, the Canadiens have a chance to eliminate the Buffalo Sabres tonight. If they win tonight, a Game 7 won't be needed, and I think fans are also feeling a bit cautiously optimistic. It's first come, first serve here at the Fan Jam outside the Bell Center. Tons of family-friendly activities here, but there's also a tattoo service if you're feeling a bit spontaneous. Lots of police presence as well tonight. Now, fans have been, for the most part, on their best behavior these past few weeks, but police are urging fans to leave the fireworks at home if they're heading down here. Now, earlier today, head coach Martin St. Louis said they can only control what they can through the chaos, and fans out here say they will need to do the same thing.
Everyone's expecting the same thing, and I'm not too worried. And we're going to stay calm, and they're going to play well tonight, and we're going to win.
It could be the end for them tonight. So Montreal's going to have it. Confident on that.
5-1, Montreal. Okay. Easy game. Easy peasy.
I think we don't need a Game 7. We need a Game 6 finisher, and it's going to be that, and I'm happy to see it. Let's go.
I'm not going to stay calm. I'm going to scream when they score.
Go Habs, go! Go Habs, go! Go Habs, go!
Now, it is an 8 o'clock start tonight, so fans still have a ton of time to get down here if this is your thing. And as for the Montreal Canadiens, they're just hoping to punch their ticket into the Eastern Conference Finals. Colleen.
Fingers crossed. Elizabeth Zagalis in Montreal. Thanks, Elizabeth. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada is this house in Kingston, Ontario. We love seeing your Canada. Please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a good night.